If you've been reading House of X and Powers of 10, the world of Marauders is coming into focus a little bit. Why pirates? Because pirates are fun, but also because in this world it makes a lot of sense.
Gerry Duggan and Matteo Lolli's Marauders debuts this week, and this is a very important comic book. This is the first comic during Jonathan Hickman's X-Men reboot, not written by Hickman himself. Gerry Duggan is hit or miss for me, generally speaking, but the man can write the hell out of Conan the Barbarian. If you didn't read the first 5 issues of Savage Sword of Conan from Duggan and artist Ron Garney, you're really missing out. It's one of the best comic stories in all of 2019. But we're getting off topic. Back to the task at hand, Marauders number 1. I initially wasn't really interested in this series when details were released during San Diego Comic-Con's Dawn of X panel. But as House of X progressed, and we learned more details of the mutant government on Krakoa, especially the role of the Hellfire Trading Company, my enthusiasm for Marauders grew enormously. Can Gerry Duggan take this very cool concept and execute it? Let's talk about that for a minute. First things first, you can definitely tell this isn't written by Jonathan Hickman. The story, while connected to Hawks and Pox, has a decidedly different feel altogether. It's much more humorous in nature, and there aren't any of the mic drop moments readers have become accustomed to over the past 13 weeks. I would describe a large portion of the jokes as cornball humor, especially when it comes to the world's coolest Omega mutant, Iceman. The plot is really good, even if the pacing is a bit off. This isn't exactly the start I was expecting, but I do recommend Marauders. Duggan introduces some really cool ideas, and I fully expect the series to pick up quickly. Normally this is the part where I would ask people to subscribe to the channel now, but I have a much more serious request today. My 4-year-old is very under the weather right now. Slightly Critical, as some of us affectionately call him, is a huge comic book fan himself. If you could send thoughts and prayers or whatever makes you comfortable his way, my family and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you to anyone who sends some healing vibes to my son, Slightly Critical. Now let's get into all the details in today's comic book review. Artist Matteo Lolli and writer Gerry Duggan had a couple-year run on Deadpool a few years back, so they're very familiar with each other. Lolli and color artist Federico Blee do a good job making Marauders look and feel similar to Pepe Larraz and R.B. Silva's Hawks and Pox visuals. The line art is very clean, and I must say Matteo has a much better visual take on Storm than either Larraz or Silva. Although I'm not too impressed with Nightcrawler here, it's a good thing he's not a member of the Seafaring Mutant team, at least as far as I know. For the most part, the visuals are energetic and engaging, thanks in large part to the coloring of Blee. Matteo doesn't lay a ton of background details, instead focusing more on the characters. Despite having a couple of interesting sequences, this book doesn't really have a standout visual like you hope for in a comic. This scene of Kitty Pryde phasing through a tank is pretty good and probably the closest thing during the story. It's a cool act for sure, but it's not that cool. Hopefully Lolli gets to lay some serious ink on some swashbuckling high seas action in the very near future. It feels like that should be one of the visual calling cards of the series. It's what sets it apart. Overall, the graphics are fun and lighthearted, matching the tone of the story. Matteo Lolli and Federico Blee feel like the right artists to execute Duggan's vision for Marauders. I rate the art 3.5 out of 5. Before I get into the characterization and plot, I want to talk about the reference material in Marauders. The white pages quickly became a staple of Hickman's X-Men reboot. They could be a bit much to process during House of X and Powers of 10, but they were absolutely vital to laying the foundation of the new X-Men status quo and planting seeds for future X-Men stories. The white pages in Marauders feel like a waste of time. The top secret document establishes that mutants are being monitored by intelligence agencies. I don't think this needed to be expressly stated, but if they needed to drive it home, this could have been conveyed in a single panel. Logan's shopping list is complete filler, at least from my vantage point. We also get the second set of sinister secrets from the Red Diamond this issue. The first set were very intriguing due to the air of mystery in Hickman's House of X and Powers of 10. Marauders doesn't have that at all. I'm honestly not all that interested in who Hellfire's first 2 choices were to captain the Marauders. It may be important later, but I'm not going to be talking to Doc or Perch trying to unravel these secrets. It doesn't feel important yet. In all honesty, these white pages feel like they're tacked on so the comic would include this staple from Hawks and Pox. If a story doesn't need white pages, they shouldn't include them, in my opinion. I imagine this will garner some hate, but I gotta keep it real here. Marauders number 1 starts with Storm and Nightcrawler inviting a group of young mutants to join them on Krakoa. Kitty tries to enter the Krakoan gate, but can't pass through, leaving her with a jacked up nose. She steals a boat from a local, loads up with Wolverine's request for booze and other amenities, and sets out to sail to Krakoa. Apparently, you can travel to Krakoa and enter the island by ship. I imagine this also works for aircraft. This is an important piece of new information. Bobby Drake is waiting for Kitty when she arrives. And I was a bit shocked by the joke here. Bobby asks Kitty if she can travel through the gates on Krakoa. She responds no, but I've been assured top men are on it. Bobby replies, I'd like to meet those top men. Today's culture is so weird. Am I even allowed to laugh at this gay joke? I honestly wish we could all have fun at each other's expense and not take everything so personally, but that's a topic for another day. I am nonetheless impressed Marvel Comics allowed a somewhat self-deprecating gay joke from Iceman. Unfortunately, he's made to look much more foolish later on. We then witness a telepathic conversation between Emma Frost and Kitty. Emma is looking for a very dependable, predictable leader to assist the Hellfire Trading Company. Emma needs someone to captain a ship to liberate mutants stuck in hostile territory and to trade Krakoan drugs on the black market. Kitty is very hesitant to accept the offer. You can tell she doesn't really trust Emma here. We also learn that Storm was the first one offered the captain's position, but turned it down due to her feelings about Emma. There's a couple of jokes here about Kitty's previous uniforms that don't really land. The foreshadowing that Kitty is the Red Queen is also laid on a bit thick for my taste. This is a good scene that drags on a bit too long, but establishes a lot about the relationship between Kitty, Emma, and Aurora, institutes the mission of the Marauders and the ship, and we know that since Kitty's the captain, she gets to choose her crew. Pretty sure that's going to be important moving forward. Meanwhile, Bobby notices a Krakoan gate isn't being used and decides to investigate. He teleports directly to Russia and is immediately met by hostiles. He's told mutants either serve the state or get crushed. He's shot by a knockoff Iron Man with power dampening abilities and is left standing in his briefs. It's very apparent Bobby's going to be played for gags in the new X-Men status quo. Although I do hope Gerry Duggan will portray him much better than Cena Grace. Iceman fans hoping for a return to the classic version of the character probably won't be very happy about this, but I didn't actually expect that personally. When Bobby returns to Krakoa, he finds Kitty drinking from Logan's stocks. He tells her they have a situation in Russia and mutants that need saving. There's then a brief cameo from Bishop as we see the situation in Taiwan isn't exactly mutant friendly. We then return to Kitty's ship, where she's assembled a crew of Storm and Iceman, and they're heading for Vladivostok. The next scene is the most interesting of the entire book in my opinion. Pyro is apparently a stowaway. He wakes up and asks the team, can a fella cash out for an hour without breaking out a Barney? Iceman is freaked out that Pyro has his original accent. Pyro then talks about being resurrected from the dead. I'm very disappointed this only happens on 2 panels. I don't remember a damn thing, and then bam, I'm suddenly awake on this magic island. Turns out, I was one of the first mutants to be resurrected. I felt so special, until I realized they used me as a lab rat. The look on his face when he talks about being a lab rat is really disheartening here. I really wish they nixed the 3 throwaway white pages and keyed in on this. I want to know how Pyro feels about the resurrection process. Is he happy? Is he conflicted? He's obviously an earlier version than when he passed away. How is this affecting his relationships? And most of all, what does he mean by being a lab rat? Is he just talking about the resurrection process, or is there more to the story? Did Charles have him experimented on? How can Duggan give me these 2 panels and change topics? I really hope this is just a taste of the story to come, because I'm very interested in the after effects of the resurrection process. Knockoff Iron Man and his Russian cohorts wait for their mutants to return through the Krakoan gate. They aren't expecting Kitty and her team to arrive by ship, and they take them by surprise. It's a nice touch showing the Marauders' preferred mode of transportation provides an element of surprise. After Bobby gets depowered into his tighty-whities again, it basically turns into the Kitty Pryde show. She uses her phasing abilities in a variety of ways, and lays waste to almost everyone. She sticks a rifle into a couple of soldiers' legs, which was the only use of her power that didn't really work for me. She eventually takes out a tank single-handedly, defeats second-rate Iron Man, and even steals her captain's blade along the way. When Kitty and her team finally save the mutants who are about to be shipped off to the gulags, we get the worst panel of the story. She names her team the Marauders, and has a pretty lame pose if I'm being honest. If you like this and think it looks cool, I'm glad it worked for someone, because it's definitely not a highlight for me. Marauders #1 is very much a Kitty Pryde story. I wish Duggan had maximized his real estate more and fleshed out a couple more characters. Iceman is basically a running gag. Storm hardly gets any shine, and Pyro gets the most interesting reveal, but it's not really explored at all. I rate the characterization 3.5 out of 5. This is a good story to start with. We learn how Kitty becomes captain, what the mission of her team is, how the core members are assembled, how they got their name, and got a bit of decent action at the end. I rate the plot 4 out of 5. Before I wrap this up, I wanted to send a friendly reminder. If you want an even more in-depth look at Marauders, tune into tomorrow's edition of Outside the Bleed, live on Thinking Critical with my good friends Skip and Tosh. We'll give our final thoughts on Marauders #1, as well as theorize what it all means and how it fits into the overall X-Men universe. We leave the margins of the comic book and explore all the implications Marauders #1 has on the X-Men, as well as the Marvel Comics universe. I think it's going to take some time to get used to people other than Jonathan Hickman writing X-Men stories again. Gerry Duggan has a successful debut on Marauders, but I was honestly expecting a bit more. The amount of ground covered doesn't really justify the page count in this comic. He meanders a bit in a couple of sections and doesn't give himself much room to flesh out many characters other than Kitty. The reveal from Pyro is easily the most exciting thing about the story, and I hope this gets expanded on sooner rather than later. The story has a much lighter tone than Hickman's writing and should serve as a good change of pace from some of the other ultra-serious X-Men books. Matteo Lolli's art might not be my favorite, but it fits the tone of the story very well. I rate Marauders #1 a very soft 4 out of 5 overall. I recommend this to fans of X-Men. This series has the most potential, concept-wise, out of all the Dawn of X titles other than X-Men itself. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.